So my favorite part of that video you just saw, the Exodus video, is that line, he draws us out to draw us in. That's the theme of the book of Exodus. More important than the slavery they were called out of, and more important than the promised land they were going to, is that God was drawing them to him, to a personal relationship with him. But if you've been paying attention in this series, there's a big problem with that. Every time the people get close to God, like to be drawn in, it's not a positive experience, right? I mean, every time they get close to God, they fear for their lives. If you don't believe me, check out again chapter 19 and chapter 20. And God says, tell the people not to get too close, otherwise they will die. And so, like, how is it possible that God is going to dwell with his people when this is what is happening? We're going to see today how God makes that possible, to be with his people in a way that we can survive it. And we are introduced in this next section to the concept of the tabernacle. And the tabernacle was that place of dwelling of God with the people. Now, we're going to get into more of the specifics of the tabernacle next week. And so don't miss that, very important. But for today, we're going to jump ahead a couple of chapters, and we're going to talk about the activity and the worship in the tabernacle that was performed by a group of people called the priests. And that's our title today, the Priesthood. 3 chapters, 28, 29, and 30. And the priests, of course, were the go-between, the mediators between very sinful, unholy people and a perfectly holy God, with a lot of instruction, procedure, sacrifices. This was the means whereby people could meet with God going through the priests. Chapters 28 is the clothing of the priest. 29 has to do with his consecration. And then 30 has to do with his calling. Let's quickly look at that. The priest's clothing, verse 1 of 28. Have Aaron, your brother, brought to you from among the Israelites, along with his sons Nadab and Abihu, Eleazar and Ithamar, so they may serve me as priests. Make sacred garments for your brother Aaron, to give him dignity and honor. Tell all the skilled workers to whom I have given wisdom in such matters that they're to make garments for Aaron for his consecration or dedication, that he may serve me as priest. These are the garments they're to make: a breastpiece, an ephod, a robe, a woven tunic, a turban, and a sash. They're to make these garments for your brother Aaron and his sons, so that they may serve me as priests. So the whole rest of the chapter is detailed specifics about this clothing the priest was supposed to wear. So we got a picture of it right here. Those are pretty cool duds right there that the priest was supposed to wear. And lots of detail we can get into, but two things I want to point out. First would be that breastplate that covered his chest, and there was 12 names there on the breastpiece, the names of the 12 tribes of Israel. And so the picture there is that the people should be on his heart, like the love for the people that he is a priest for. And then on his head was the turban. You can't see it, but written across there is, "Holy is the Lord." So I really like that. God is on his mind. That's what this is about. It's not about him, or the priest. It's about God and the love of the people on his heart. Number 2 is the priest's consecration. Verse 1 of 29. This is what you're to do to consecrate them so they may serve me as priests. And then all throughout the rest of the chapter, you have all of these preparations the priest had to go through. Very important. 7 days of preparation and purification before the grand opening of the tabernacle. And not just the preparation for the 7 days, but then daily preparation that priests needed to go through before they even went to work every day. Kind of what this looked like is there was special baths, and then there was anointing with a special oil, and then they put their garments on, and then there was necessary blood sacrifice that the priest had to offer, sacrificing some animals, bulls, rams, for himself, for his own atonement, forgiveness of his own sin, which would explain why sinful people could be priests, because this sacrifice satisfied the Lord and was a covering for them before holy God. So the sacrifices, and they would take a small amount of blood from that sacrifice, and they would put a little bit on the right ear of the priest, the right thumb, and the right big toe. Powerful symbolism that he should only hear the word of the Lord, only do the work of the Lord, and only follow the Lord. So that's the priest consecration. Finally, 3, the priest callings, or his duties. And it was essentially to perform ongoing sacrifices on the altar for the people. There was a sin offering and grain offering and burnt offering and guilt offering and fellowship offerings, all these different offerings. And there's more specifics on them in the book of Leviticus. But ongoing sacrifices before the Lord and ongoing incense that was to be offered continually. It was never to go out. And that incense, scripturally speaking, is always a picture of prayer, that we should keep prayer nonstop going up to the Lord and actually trying to make heaven smell better through our prayers, if you can imagine that. There were other duties, keeping the lampstand full and lit continually with the oil, collecting offerings from the people, and some other things. What does all of this have to do with us today? Okay, like why don't we do these things today? And how come I'm not dressed like this guy on the screen? Okay, well, when Jesus died and rose from the dead, his sacrificial death did away with all of the Old Testament priesthood. And so we read clearly in the book of Hebrews, chapter 10, and many places. Here's one example. There's no more need for animal sacrifices. We have been made holy through the sacrifice of the body of Jesus Christ once for all. Day after day, every priest stands and performs his religious duties. Again and again, he offers the same sacrifices, which can never take away sins. But when this priest, Jesus, had offered for all time one sacrifice for sins, he sat down at the right hand of God. For by one sacrifice, he has made perfect forever those who are being made holy. So as the perfect Son of God and our great high priest, he offered up himself. Jesus himself was the sacrifice, the Lamb of God, our substitute. He wiped away our sin. He makes us holy before the Lord. That's the great news of what Jesus has done for us. Now I want to show you a few pictures here on the screen. Ask this question: which one of these pictures best captures your idea of a priest? Well, probably depending on your background, you have some preconceived ideas of what here best represents a priest. But it's important to differentiate between man-made tradition, your culture, and what the Bible teaches. And it's very clear the Bible teaches that every Christian is a priest. So the only way that the guys in the top row, which you probably thought, oh, those are the priests, the only way that they are priests is if they're Christians. Okay? And the people that don't look really priestly in the bottom row, they are priests if they are Christians. So check this out. The old priesthood is terminated. The new priesthood is us. 1 Peter 2:5, you also, like living stones, are being built up into a spiritual house to be a holy priesthood, offering spiritual sacrifices acceptable to God through Jesus Christ. You're a chosen people, a royal priesthood. There it is again. A holy nation, a people belonging to God, that you may declare the praises of him who called you out of darkness and into his wonderful light. Let me lay out the specifics of this so you see the difference between the old priesthood and the new today. In the old priesthood, it was made up only of Aaron's descendants. And so it was based on special selection. So it was a very narrow list of people that could qualify. In the new priesthood, it's all of us, all believers. What a huge difference. In the old priesthood, the sacrifices were offered in the temple, could only happen in the temple. In the new priesthood, our lives are the sacrifice. We're living sacrifices for the Lord, offering ourselves, and our bodies are the temple. Now, that is a huge game changer. Like, we are now housing God. individually and as a church. Now, we're quick to say here at River Valley, this is not a temple. We don't call this room a temple. We don't even call it a sanctuary. And the reason is because that implies that this is like a holy room, like a temple theology. No, the temple is you. The temple is wherever the people of God are. You could be in a warehouse. You could be in my backyard. Like that's where the sanctuary is where God's people are. Now, we're thankful for buildings like this, but it's not like a holy place like in the Old Testament. It's wherever God's people are. In the old priesthood, you had one guy ministering to many, and so there's a dependence on one man. And talk about a bottleneck. And then today, you have many serving each other, and an interdependence on. It's like a beautiful web or tapestry of priestly activity that's happening all throughout God's people. Finally, the presence of God was in the temple, and now the presence of God is in each Christian. Old versus new today. Now, you might be thinking, Mark, I'm confused. The priesthood, you say, is over, but why are there still priests today in some of the Christian denominations? Great question. Glad you asked, by the way. Around the 3rd century, here's what happened. See, for the first couple hundred years of church history, all Christians were priests, and no church leaders were called priests, capital P. Until the 3rd century, where this great biblical doctrine of the priesthood of the believers that I've been talking about was gradually replaced by a really bad doctrine called sacerdotalism. And sacerdotalism is the belief that God's grace and work can only happen and only flow through official church leaders upon the people. Cyprian, the powerful bishop of Carthage, he took all the passages in the Old Testament which refer to the duties of the priesthood, and he applied them to the officers of the Christian church. And he started calling church leaders priests who dispense the graces of God upon the people of God. And the mentality was that only through the priest could your soul be nourished and perfected before God. Now, tragically, that teaching stuck. The title priest in denominations stuck. So now, as you know, it's used in the Roman Catholic Church, used in the Orthodox Church, in the Anglican Church, and in the Episcopal Church. And this teaching opened the door, tragically, for a lot of bad theology. For example, only the priest can perform the sacraments like lead in communion. Only the priests can lead the church mass or service. Only the priests can truly study and teach the Bible for real. And you have to confess your sins to a priest to be made right before God. And a lot of other stuff that's just unfortunate, and it's more man-made stuff than biblical. The goal of Martin Luther and the Protestant Reformation was to eliminate this middleman, this priestly middleman that you have to go through to be right or accepted into God's presence. So that's how we got to where we are today. Okay. Now, before we get too critical of this error in Catholic doctrine, I think it's really important that we admit we have our own version of Protestant priests and popes. You're like, Mark, what do you mean? Every time we believe that an ordinary Christian is not qualified enough to approach God, and they need a special holy man or woman to connect them, that's the same bad doctrine. So the big idea is that every Christian is God's priest, and this means 3 things. First, you have access to God. Okay? Through Christ, you have full and complete entrance into God's holy presence because of the perfect righteousness of God that you received as a free gift. You don't go earn it. He gave it to you that makes you accepted in His sight as a believer in Jesus Christ. You don't need no pope or priest or any of that to come to God. Hebrews 10:19, therefore, Brothers, since we have confidence to enter the most holy place by the blood of Jesus, by a new and living way opened for us through the curtain, that is his body, and since we have a great high priest over the house of God, let us draw near to God with a sincere heart, in full assurance of faith, having our hearts sprinkled to cleanse us from guilty conscience, and having our bodies washed with pure water. We can draw near now because of what Christ has done for us. Of course, it's good to get teaching from others and get counsel from others and be prayed for by others, but we can go directly to God. Number two, you are an ordained minister. Now, before you just completely write me off here, hear me out. This is so amazing. The Bible clearly teaches that in that respect, we're on the same level. All priests, you can do pretty much anything a pastor can do. Teach others the Bible, pray for others, visit people in the hospital, especially in this church, baptize people, lead in communion, encourage others. We all have that privilege together to be ministers. The word minister means servant. Ordained means just like anointed, that God has called us into this authority and in this privilege. Now, it doesn't rule out the need for paid pastors. The Bible's clear about that the church does need leadership. The role of pastors, the reason I exist, the reason God has me here and our whole staff is to help the church get active and to get built up and to serve. It's not a place of spectators to watch a few ministers. It's to empower, equip, and unleash y'all, okay? That's what we're talking about. And so what does this look like? What are your duties? A couple of examples. Romans 12:1. Therefore I urge you, brothers, in view of God's mercy, to offer your bodies as living sacrifices, holy and pleasing to God. This is your spiritual act of worship. So this verse and all that I'm going to share here, this is priestly vocabulary. And here it says living sacrifice. That's what we're supposed to do, living sacrifice. This is Christianity at the core. Right? Jesus never asked us to do anything he didn't do, and he laid his life down, literally, the way he lived as a sacrifice and the way he died. I'm not saying that we're all going to die for the Lord or that any of us will actually die for the Lord, but it's a willingness to lay down our selfishness, lay down our rights, lay down our need for comfort, lay down us. That's what a living sacrifice is, to then be performing as a priest before the Lord. Hebrews 13:15, through him then let us continually offer up a sacrifice of praise to God. That is the fruit of lips that give thanks to his name. So whenever we praise God, like what you guys are just doing singing, or like you're just hanging out, you're at work and you just start praising God. You're listening to Christian music, you're driving. That's kind of how it should look. Like we're just continually rejoicing, thanking God, or at least, we try to. That's how life goes well, when we stay in God's presence. That's a way to be a priest. That's a way to keep heaven smelling better. That aroma, that incense of praise before the Lord. And then it says, don't neglect to do good and share, for with such sacrifices God is pleased. Totally spiritualizes and makes sacred everything we do. And where you are at work and what you're doing there in your home and the kind of neighbor that you are. That's sacred stuff. That's a way to be a priest there. It's taking care of that sink full of dishes, right? Somebody just jump in there and just do it, right? It's helping that neighbor who's spreading some bark or whatever. It's just taking that opportunity, keeping our eyes out, and that's the good that it's talking about here, and sharing, right? Sharing, it's a great privilege. We share ourselves, right? We share our finances. We share our abilities. All that we have it's something we can share. It's part of what life groups are about. And the church is all about life groups. We say that rows are good, circles are better. Okay, rows are good, but circles are way better, because then it forces us to you're not just staring at me, you're like each other, and how you can share life, share prayer, share help, practical, tangible things. So our life group season's wrapping up here, I think, this week for most groups. And a lot of groups taking a break for the summer. But we have new seasons starting in the fall. Just want to get you thinking about that. I hope all of you are like into a group next fall, because it's definitely where the action is as far as the kinds of things the New Testament talks about, and sharing your life with others. A prayer is a big part of this. Psalm 141, verse 2, may my prayer be set before you like incense. May the lifting of my hands be like the evening sacrifice. So, guys, think about this. And I've been very convicted of this recently. By nature, I'm a doer. By nature, I'm a fix-it. I'm like, hey, let's get on the calendar. Let's plan it out. It's going to go good. It worked last year. Greatest way to be a priest is to take people into God's presence. Like, do you realize, I was just thinking about that. Man, how arrogant that I can be to think that I'm just going to go, like, take care of it because I can teach or because I can help or I can plan or I can. God, we need you to change this person, strengthen our city, work in my family, change me. Like I was sharing with the other services, I've been tempted to shut down all River Valley ministry for a month and just pray. Okay, guys, all we do is pray. I need help with my marriage. Nope, pray. My kid's driving nuts. Pray. Okay, I just shut. No, we're not going to do that. Okay, we're not going to shut everything down. But the idea of let's just go to God first. We realize the privilege of that. Nothing more loving than bringing people into God's presence. Well, we can go on and on. The ministry of reconciliation, 2 Corinthians 5. What do priests do? Connect people to God. And I trust that you desire to do that. I hope that there's people in your life you're trying to connect to God. What is a Christian if they're not trying to connect people to Jesus? Right? Maybe it's someone in your family, or maybe it's a neighbor, or maybe someone you work with. It's like, God, I pray that they would come to know you. I want them to know Jesus. Church in the Park coming. That's a great opportunity. People get blown away at what's going on out there in the park with all those people. And it's a great opportunity. Every year people get saved and baptized. A church service like this. People get blown away that church runs like this. It's just different than what they think. Where there's like real people and we don't have to dress up and messages actually apply, I hope, and the music is good and relevant. People miss that. They think church is like completely out of touch and completely irrelevant, and there's some real cool stuff that's happening here. And so don't miss the opportunity to try to connect people to Jesus. Not that you have to invite people to church to do that, but that's one way. Invite them over for dinner or whatever. Number 3, you have a responsibility for others. See, one of the big dangers of this teaching, in fact, Martin Luther warned about this, the priesthood of the believer, is that we would develop this attitude, I'm my own priest, I don't need you guys. I'm good on my own. And Luther actually said, no, the opposite's true. That it's a priesthood, okay, emphasis on the hood, on the plural, that it's what we're doing together, that we are, worshiping God. Like you could just like Pandora or YouTube church this morning at home. Had maybe you could have found a better sermon than this for sure. Like online, there's better music and you could have just done that. But the thing is, it's better together. That's what priests do. They worship God together. They pray for one another together. They share the word, with each other, share lives, serving one another. It's not a do-it-yourself Christianity. 1 Peter 4:10, each one of you, so how many of us? Each means each, should use whatever gift he has received to serve others. That pretty much sums it up. Whatever gift, time, talent, abilities, possessions, experiences, scars, I'll throw that in. We forget that scars can be gifts in that. This is what God will use as some of our best resume stuff to really help people who are going through the same stuff. Faithfully administering God's grace in its various forms. Don't read over that. That's where the grace of God is flowing through all of us to each other. And it says if you speak, you should do it as one speaking the very words of God. So whenever we open our mouths, God, use this voice for you. Anyone who serves, he should do it with the strength that God provides, so that in all things God may be praised through Jesus Christ. So I want to say that this is why we have gifts and talents and abilities and possessions and weaknesses. This is why. This is for God to then use and to get us about participation. I call church a team sport. Okay, I know a lot of times we can view it as that person's church or it's this guy. No, church is us. Church is all about participation. And I like to say that it's a lot more fun to be the church than go to church. Church in action, where we all do our part. Because there's a place for you, no matter what your spiritual maturity is, no matter what time you have, okay, no matter what abilities, age, okay, there's a place for you in God's church to play a key role, a huge role. I mean, if we had any idea the significance of one little act, one prayer, one child that you care for and love, man, I think we would do a lot more than what we're doing, a lot of us. And you might think, I've been sharing this with each service. I hear this sometimes, and I try not to laugh out loud. You might think that a church like River Valley, we have everything covered. Like, oh man, you look at what's going on, look at this, look at that. It's like, it looks like you guys are good. You guys have everything covered. And yet, actually, the opposite is true. I don't think we have it covered in anything. Like we're not fully covered with volunteers in any ministry. Not even one. I just think about it going down the list. And again, this is not just like a commercial. Like, I'm just telling you how things work and how much each person is needed. Because you might think it's all covered, and it's not. Like musicians, because of our philosophy, multiple campus and rotation, so we don't burn people out, we need musicians, and we'll help train you. Like, we need drummers, and we need guitar players, and we need bass players, and we need all that. There's a place for you. Some of you out there, maybe this is who you are. Okay? We need hospitality people, like people that will smile at the door, shake a hand, welcome. That can really make somebody's day. Ushers, people in the cafe. Cafe was closed last week. Again, it's just a volunteer issue. Keeping us awake with good brew, like that's really important, right? And that's a ministry. Some of you'd love to do that. That's priest stuff. Some of you, like you're like more, I'm gonna prepare a meal for somebody, like in crisis. We got that, and love to put you to work there. Or do projects. Maybe you're like a handyman, handywoman kind of a person, painting or projects. And so we've got that for needy people, plus around the church, right? This is an old facility. There's a lot to do around here. It's endless. And we'd love to put you, again, according to your time and abilities. We just need to know. We just need to know what are the things that you want to do. And we need life group leaders. This church is all about life groups, so it's always a challenge, getting more and more. We'll probably need 10 new groups for the fall just to facilitate the new people that want to be in groups. And God is preparing some of you for this. We'll train you. We'll help you to facilitate a group of people. It doesn't have to be in your home. But again, this is, behind the scenes stuff. I like to say that if the volunteers at River Valley walked away tomorrow, we're done. Just forget it. Close the doors. Because, that's how important all the behind the scenes stuff that's going on here in our church. Most churches, I'm told, 20% of the people do all the work. And then it's kind of hard to believe, but I guess this is a true statistic. And 80% don't really do anything. And I know at River Valley it's got to be higher because I'm just running the numbers of all the ministries that we have. But I don't think any of us would say it's high enough. My dream is to flip that. 80% serving, because you're always going to have probably 20% that aren't ready. They're just seeking the Lord. not sure about the church. Maybe they're so wounded or hurt, they just need some time to heal. Totally respect that. That's part of why we're here. But for those who call this church their home and who love Jesus, can I tell you my heart? Like way more than teaching sermons, my heart is to get you in the game. Because you have talents, you have abilities, you have experiences, you have things that only you, I am not going to be able to do that. You can do it. I don't know what that is. Maybe you don't even know what that is. We try to help you figure out what that is. And can you imagine, I was dreaming about this, if 80% of our church, like all of a sudden, you know what happens? Like, can you imagine, you go to Pastor Chuck in the children's ministry, I want to serve in children's ministry. Oh, sorry, we're full. I'll put you on a waiting list. Can you imagine that? Oh, you want to play in the band? No, we got so many musicians, we don't know what to do with ourselves, Like, guys, this would be such a good problem. I don't know if that's ever going to happen, but I mean, I think that it's doable. I think if we all, like a pastor, I heard a pastor years ago says, some of us, we just need to get off our blessed assurance and get into the game, okay? Because being the church is a lot more fun than just going to church. And so that's what I want to do. I want to try to, in any way I can, to help you in whatever. I've given you some examples, but there's like 1,000 more that are out there that I could have shared or that God has laid on your heart. And, if somebody's not serving and actually not involved in using their gifts, then the reason for that likely is, number one, they have a wrong view of church, that church is just something you go to, which you won't find in the New Testament because church is a verb. Two, there's likely a lie we're believing. We're probably believing a lie that we're not qualified. Our lives are too much of a mess. Or if you knew my background, or I'm too busy, or I don't have anything to offer. Lie, 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 lie. Okay? Welcome to the club. We all fit those categories. Okay? We're just a bunch of messed up people who love Jesus, and she's using us. Okay? And so, man, here's what I want to do. I'm going to get super specific. And I see I'm out of time. So, can you grab one of these cards right there in front of you? There should be a stack of them. Just grab one right now, please. And I want to ask you to do one of two things. There's a box on there, and it says serving. And as I've been talking, you perhaps, like, just in your mind, you're like, yeah, for sure, man. I know I need to plug in. Like I need to help with the projects. I want to help with meals. I just know right away. Or maybe it's something I didn't say. Maybe the Lord's been talking to you about loving kids, working with the kids ministry. Like we probably need about 60 people yesterday in the children. We have so many kids in different times, different services, different locations. And I'm thinking, man, that's like maybe the most important ministry ever is the kids, right? And just especially like men. I mean, we love y'all and the kids ministry, but the men getting down there on the floor with like a rug rat, and loving on the kids. And it might take 3 of us to get you back up off the floor. But I mean, that kind of stuff. But you know how we do that? Because some of you are so you're thinking, man, if I sign up for the kids, I'll never come out alive. It's just a big sucking sound. I'll never come out alive. Listen, we're sensitive to your schedule, to your life, to not burning you out. A lot of this is a once a month commitment at one of the services. Can you imagine if we all do a little? If we all do a little, then all of a sudden this stuff is taken care of. And then we're you know what happens? When we just come to church, it gets boring. The Christian faith gets boring, right? It's just like being on a team and just standing on the sidelines. We want to get you in, and maybe that's with kids. So you could check that. Like, and again, you're not committing yourself to anything other than just talking to somebody. And if you're not ready for that, can you at least do this? Take it home. Take it home with you. Put it somewhere. I was going to say put it in your Bible, but put it somewhere where you're going to see it. Okay, and and sorry, that wasn't nice. And pray it over. God, what are you asking me to do? I want to make a difference. I want my life to count for you. Because we want God to be praised through Jesus Christ. And that's what happens. And when we do our part, every one of us is blessed. Like if I don't serve, there's a kink in the hose. God's grace is stopping on me. Same thing with you. If you don't serve, God's grace is stopping on you. And it's not going through you to people like me that need it. And can we talk selfishness for just a second? It's best for you too. It's called helper's high. Like dopamine's actually triggered when you get out of yourself and like help somebody and serve. So let's pray. God.